Welcome to the show. It's really great to have you with us. Now, Mr. Halavi, you said there is no such thing as an orderly way to carry out intelligence. Does this mean there are no laws, no rules of conduct for intelligence gathering?
Intelligence is one of the oldest professions in the world, but there is no law book concerning intelligence. There are no agreed rules on intelligence, and despite that, intelligence is a main player in international relations and in domestic relations.
But when you say that there is no such thing as an orderly way to carry out intelligence, what exactly do you mean?
I mean that intelligence is not a science. I believe that intelligence is an art, and therefore, just as there's no orderly way to paint a picture, so is there no orderly way to carry out intelligence, because every intelligence operation is an operation in itself, and one operation does not compare or is not similar to any other.
How does intelligence gathering against terrorism work? Are terrorist groups being infiltrated? Are undercover agents working among terrorists?
I believe that all the methods used in intelligence over the years are employed. Most certainly you have agents undercover. Most certainly you have electronic intelligence with all the new developments in that field. Every element that you have in modern day information technology is used and is employed in intelligence, by the way, not only by intelligence agencies, but also by groups like ISIS and Hezbollah.
But, I'm particularly interested in undercover agent work. How do you gain the trust of a radical group? I mean, it must be hard to infiltrate Islamic State, for example.
I'm sure it is difficult to infiltrate the Islamic State, but now you go into the question of motivation. What motivates somebody who is in the Islamic State to cooperate? And I should imagine that probably the major motivation is discussed over the methodology used by the Islamic State, not only in treating its enemies, but also treating some of its own people.
So are you saying people that are part of Islamic State are appalled by their own methods, but they can't leave because if they leave, they're going to die? So they choose to cooperate?
I believe that probably, I'm only surmising, I've not been there for quite some time, so I can only surmise. I believe that many of the people who cooperate because they are unable to leave, but on the other hand, they feel that they are not of their own will involved in a big effort of, shall we say, of evil, which has to be overcome. And they want to contribute their part to this.
All right, so I get your first point. In order to infiltrate an organization like ISIS, you got to find someone who is appalled by their own methods. But once you infiltrate, if an undercover agent gains the trust, right, of a terrorist cell, will he have to do as the others do? For example, I don't know, behead someone. Is this expected of the agent?
I think I cannot give you an exact answer to that. And I don't believe anybody has the right answer to that. But I believe that in the end, in order to achieve the ultimate aim, sometimes along the way, you have to do things which normally you would not like to do.
Now, intelligence gathering has helped curb the amount of bombings that are happening in Israel. But what's the use of it when people resort to stabbings or drive-by shootings?
I believe, and that's my personal view, that it's wrong to call stabbings terrorism. I believe terrorism is something more organized. It's part of a larger movement. Stabbings and similar events are individual reactions to what is happening and what is perceived in one way or another as threatening the fabric and society of the people who are doing the stabbings, and therefore they carry it out. But the general term of terrorism, although it's implied to that, is not a terrorism which can be codified like, let's say, an organization like ISIS or an organization like the Hamas or an organization like Hezbollah.
How can attackers with no ties to any terrorist group be caught before they act?
It's a serious problem. I think no formula has been found for that. And therefore, the individual who decides on his own to carry out a terrorist act, if he is careful and if he knows how to operate, most probably will be able to arrive on the scene. But there are a lot of methods and ways of monitoring central areas, main highways, transportation systems, and so forth. So sometimes you can catch the people as they're on their way.
You've seen Mossad operate abroad, doing the so-called normal intelligence work like spying, surveillance, but it also undertakes targeted assassinations of terrorist leaders. How do you decide when to pull the trigger on someone? When is enough for Mossad?
Well, I don't personally wish to go into this field of when we make a decision to remove somebody to a better world. I think the international society would be better served by not prying into this unnecessarily. You will not find, I believe, any intelligence officer either side of the divide in this world of ours who will want to talk about it, and I want to keep my hands clean on that. As I said, I don't want to say that we make such decisions. I don't want to go into the details of how we decide, how we carry out the operations, which operations are carried out, which not. I think it would be better for the peace and tranquility of international society to leave these questions and answers unanswered.
Sure. America looks to use drones when taking out terrorists. Does Mossad use drones too, or it only works the old-fashioned way with agents on the ground?
Mossad has all the means and all the methodologies which are used in intelligence in modern-day life. Mossad is in the forefront of technology in all the fields that you can think of. And I think that Mossad has done extremely well in developing some of the more advanced types and of weaponry and systems which carry weaponry.
You know, when one of Mossad's most infamous operations, the attempted assassination of Hamas leader Khaled Mashal, went wrong, you played an active part in regulating the situation's aftermath. 2 Mossad agents were captured and Israel managed to get them back. If an operation like that backfires, does Mossad try to get its agents back at all costs?
The word all costs, I think, is not the right term to use. It is true that I played a very central role in solving the problem which arose as a result of an operation which did not reach a successful conclusion in 1997. And in that area, I performed the role of a special emissary acting on behalf of the Prime Minister of Israel at the time, who was Mr. Netanyahu in his first term. And I did not wish to reach a point in which all costs are paid in order to get the result. I think we had to get a result which would make it a win-win situation. In other words, that both we and those who had been wronged by us would emerge from the situation with a feeling and a public aura of having been successful.
Mossad is known to go after perpetrators of terrorist attacks anywhere. Mossad's special unit, the Kidan, is responsible for that. This works as revenge. But does it deter terrorists from striking again?
Look, I don't want to talk about deterrence because in the end, let us be frank with ourselves. We have never reached a point in which we can say that actions we have taken have deterred terrorism. I think that the word deterrence is a word, or is I think a theme which should be forgotten in dealing with these matters. What we can do is to destroy capabilities. What we can do is to get the other side to realize that the pain of continuing what they're doing would be insufferable for them. If that is called a deterrence, yes, deterrence. But if you look at things in the Middle East, if you look at the way the relations with Israel and its neighbors has evolved on terrorism when it comes to organized terrorism, I'm not talking about small groups, but organized terrorism. like Hezbollah, like Hamas. What we have achieved is, I think, mutual deterrence and not just deterrence.
But in order to stop a terrorist, you need to put fear in him. How do you put the fear in people who are willing to blow themselves up?
I think the use of the term fear is misplaced. We don't want to get the other side to fear. We want the other side to take a logical approach which leads him to the conclusion that the price that would be paid is not a price which they would wish to pay. In other words, we have to make the price such that the other side does not think it worth its while to pay it.
All right, Mr. Halavi, we're going to take a short break right now. Part of Mossad's arsenal, like Trojan worms, viruses, etc.
I'm not permitted to refer to any specific means that is in our arsenal. I'm sorry. I know it's interesting, but I cannot relate to that.
It truly is. Then tell me in general, do cyber tools make spying easier, or the amount of information to process, it's just too big to manage?
There's nothing too big to manage, and I don't want to go into the details of cyber warfare. It is something which is being, I think, used and exploited around the world, and I think that this is something which is a big threat to international security in the end, because once you begin a major confrontation in the cyber field, the penalty for all those players who would be involved in it would be enormous.
Now, it's no secret that Mossad recruits some of its agents online. You can fill out an application form on the website. You are the first one to institute this practice, like you've said. How does this process work? I mean, if you like a candidate, do you just invite them for an interview? Or how successful have you been using this recruitment process for agents?
Well, first of all, let me say you are right. I was the first one who put the Mossad on the net. And there was enormous opposition to that in the Mossad. People thought that I was doing the wrong thing. Now, of course, you cannot imagine without it. But obviously, this is only the first step in recruiting somebody. It's a method of casting a wide net as possible. And once you reach a stage in which you want to actually decide whether to recruit somebody or not, you will not do it by correspondence. You will do it by face-to-face contact.
But who do you pull in more? People from the web or just people that you see in the street and you approach them?
I don't know. And I don't think that any statistics are drawn up in this field. I think we recruit people from all ways of getting it to people, all methods of communication. And in the end, we have as wide as possible choice as we can hope for.
Now, social media like Facebook or Twitter, they've turned into a platform for terrorists to incite violence, and they spread radical ideas and exchange plans. Is this cyber terrorism the world is facing a new thing, and will it be the future?
It's not the future. I think it is the present. And I think, yes, one of the things we have to take into account is the terrorist groups have use these methods and these tools for their own vile deeds. I can tell you that without the use of internet, the attack in the United States on 9/11 would not have been possible. All this was organized through IT means and methods. And the road from that to other ways of carrying out warfare, like cyber warfare and so forth, are at the disposal of the terrorist groups, and they have used it in some areas, in some cases, almost to perfection.
You know, lone wolf terrorist attacks, when people act on their own without the assistance of a group, but inspired by a radical ideology, they're becoming more frequent. You've faced them in Israel, and Europe has witnessed a whole series of such attacks over the past year. Is there a direct link between online incitement and lone wolf attacks, since the internet provides easy and fast access to radical ideas?
I think it would not be useful to attribute too much to the methodology.